Hola, welcome back to the Friction Healing Podcast. I'm so excited. We're already diving in, so I'm like, let me hit record. Let me start part 2 with Laylee. Welcome back, mujer. Thank you so much for being up for part 2 because I feel like this is where things get juicier and we
they
get
already
to go a little deeper. So yeah, thank you so much for being here. And actually, I'll give you just a moment to plug like what you do, where people can find you from the beginning, because I know in part 1, we left it till the end.
Yeah, definitely. So my name is Laylee Morris. I am a licensed professional counselor in Austin, Texas, and I have my own private practice called Rooted Love Counseling. And you can find me on Instagram at Rooted Love Counseling, and I provide counseling services to adults, typically individual counseling, and then I am also an alignment coach as well. So if folks are looking for help navigating their own like spiritual practice, meditation, breath work, connecting with ancestors, things of that nature, I'm also I serve as a coach and a guide.
So today's topic, I think, came organically because we've been talking a little bit about like comparison, and sometimes when we embody things like perfectionism, being un ejemplo, all of these things, they make us think like, well, if I'm not perfect in all areas of my life, like who am I to share my story? Who am I to tell other people, give other people advice or lo que sea?
When I'm learning continuously is that one, I don't think I'm ever going to master myself in any way or form. Like, I feel like I'm a wild woman, chaotic woman, who, is just a full human who makes mistakes and isn't like perfect, can be sloppy and can be all of these beautiful things. And that the adventure and fun is in that process, right? Of messiness, of what I always call it like ooey gooeyness. Like it makes me think of like when you break into a chocolate chip cookie and all of the gooey bits, and that's the best part of it.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Yes, we all have ooey gooey parts. And, what I have learned, for example, in the online space is that sometimes people can market themselves beautifully and you're like, oh my God, they're living like the best life. Like, I want that for myself. But that doesn't always translate in how they live their day to day. And so I think like similarly, when we look around and we're like, oh, but they don't have these ooey gooey parts, it doesn't mean that they don't. It's just that maybe they don't know how to highlight them. They're so uncomfortable with them that they've never even looked their way. Like we don't know, right? Like the reality of other people's story and why they're choosing or not choosing to share it, even in families, in friendships, and relationships. People can spend lifetimes hiding those ooey gooey parts and not embracing them, thinking because of fear, maybe, or because of whether it's fear of rejection, fear of being seen, fear of being loved for them. No sé, I think there's probably a lot of different reasons why people hide that.
Yeah. Especially around social media, how everything is so curated. It just all looks so perfect. And especially if you're a person who is struggling with relationships where they are in life and you're scrolling through social media and you're seeing these very curated people. For me, there was always a tendency to be like, well, why can't I be there? Or what happened, right, to me that it's not, or why isn't it working for me? And also the aspect, I think you make a really good point of the visibility, right? Especially when we're navigating parts that don't feel so good or situations that we don't feel like we have control over.
Yeah.
And control is another big part of it too, that I feel is rooted in fear versus trusting that you're able to navigate things, right? Control and trust are on the opposite spectrums, I feel.
Yeah.
As the eldest, having to have this put together sense of self always created such a disembodiment of self that I'm
Yeah.
still navigating today. Like we talked about Previously, it's like this aspect of not being able to connect with self because of the constant abandoning of self to pretend to be something that I'm not. It created such an unsafe presence for me to be fully in my body and to be fully who I am without
Mm,
feeling nervous about how I'm presenting myself, especially in a society where people who are brown and black and,
mm,
BIPOC have to figure out how to navigate terrains with a view, with a white
yeah,
view, of like who we should be or how we should behave. And
yeah.
so it's so many, there's so many layers to that, right? And how we can continuously abandon self if we're don't make the conscientious choice of coming back to self. And I also want to say that's not easy, especially if you lived in a body, in a life, in a family where that wasn't safe. So that's
Mhm.
the other level of that, where I feel like
Yeah,
therapy and all these other modalities help create that sense of safety, like breath work, and somatic therapies.
I appreciate that you're bringing in, like, also the climate or whatever we wanna call it, like, what is happening right now, because that's very real. I think, like, it's this conversation about authenticity is a privilege, and also I wanna recognize that, like, not everyone gets to be fully authentically themselves, not even if they want to be, for their own safety right now. And in workspaces, maybe, like, you're at the job that is providing for you and your family, and there isn't room for you to be fully yourself, and that's harsh and hard. And maybe in a different era or a few years ago, it was more palpable to play or to experiment and say, like, "Can I further be myself here?" And sometimes for people, it might not feel safe right now to do so. Um, and yeah, I think I in the past, like, during the Naranja's first term, I remember I was working in Orange County. Había muchas güeras, and my clients were all güeros, and I did feel that, like, how much room is there for me? Like, how much room can I take up? And what does it mean to be a Latina in this space? Because I'm proud of being a Latina, but, like, are they gonna receive me that way? Is it like, let's say, wearing my hoop earrings or whatever, like, is it professional, And talking with the way that I do, like, is that allowed? Do they see me as less? So it's like all of these things can add up into, like, maybe my fullness isn't welcome here. And for some right now, like in the past, maybe I would be like, no, dare to challenge that, dare to question that, dare to come up and show up as you. But right now, I think it is worthy of being like, whatever feels safe to you, like it's a delicate
Yeah.
dance voice that everyone's kind of learning to navigate.
I say that it's a spectrum, right? Because you're very right. Like we can both sit here and be like, oh, show up in your authenticity, do this work, do all of these things, because we know how it feels to do it and how empowered we feel and how that's changed our lives for the
Hmm.
better, right?
Hmm.
And I also honor, and I feel like that's what you're saying as well. So correct me if I'm wrong, but this aspect of the work too is honoring where everyone is at, right? And meeting
Yeah.
them there with safety and trust and compassion. Compassion has been a really big word for me this year. Compassion in all spaces, right? Not only for others, but
Mm,
for myself and my own journey. And that ability of flexibility, that how flexible can I be with my expectations, with outcomes, as long
mm,
as, right, I'm not abandoning myself in the process of that or allowing other people to mistreat me, right?
yeah.
And recognizing
Yeah.
that my choice is a privilege as well. Even in these conversations, there's so much nuance that I just want to put out there and highlight as well. Because we're
Yeah.
so unique. And to prescribe something that's like a 1, 2, 3 step process for everyone feels very unrealistic and disingenuous to the work that I do.
I agree. I think there is a lot of nuance. And like, just I think one thing that I want to say though is that when I work with clients, sometimes they come in feeling like caged in and feeling like there is no room. But what has been really beautiful to witness is that there are ways that they've been able to come back to themselves. There are small ways in which you can make space for yourself in your relationships, let's say. So there are ways in which you shrink without realizing. Maybe every time a family member calls, all they do is speak about them. And you've learned to just make space for their problems and for their venting. And you know that they're just calling you for that, not necessarily for how you're doing. And so I tell clients sometimes, like, it's okay for you to like take up 10% of that call. And maybe they don't feel like a safe person to tell them your deepest, hardest things that you're navigating. But just like maybe they're telling you chisme, tell them a chisme de trabajo or something that feels good to soltarles a ellos, you know? And take up 10% more than you're used to in a conversation. Or if there's people that always hit you up because they need a favor from you, start scheduling the favors out. So, like, yeah, I can help you, but not this weekend, next weekend. And give yourself a little bit of room. And the shifts that happen when they start to realize, like, oh my God, I've never thought of saying yes and not today in a week, you know? And I'm like, yeah, and guess what? Most people aren't going to be like, no, it has to be today. Like, most people will be like, oh, okay, yeah, and maybe by then they don't need your help anymore. Like they'll figure it out. It's like, but a veces cuando estamos en esa posición, we think there are no options and we're the only ones and we have to do it now. Everything's urgent. That's just what we've gotten some people used to, you know? And it's like a rhythm of like getting them used to something different, slowly, safely.
Giving people permission. Like it's not that you have to, but maybe they're not allowing themselves to say, let me try this.
Mm,
And ultimately it's up to them if they want to like do it or not. But
yeah,
you gave them a different blueprint.
yeah. And it's been beautiful to witness because then it's like they start doing it and they start seeing that it's okay, you know? Sometimes it's our fear that stops us from scheduling something out because you interpret it's an emergency. They interpret like it's a lot. I've realized like with that control aspect, we think we need to control outcomes. And so maybe like the way that I think I have control is by helping right now. And so they're gonna think I'm a good person. Because if I schedule it out, then I'm a bad person. And it's like, well, do you think you're a good person? Yeah. Okay, boom, back to center, you know? And then
Exactly.
letting the rest fall as it needs to. So, like, yes, navigate however you feel. And then, and I always, I'm the type to like try and stretch a little, you know, like there's different ways of stretching out and giving yourself room that maybe feel scary, but aren't fully unsafe, like our minds think or our nervous systems think, you know?
Yeah, exactly. What I learned in my journey was this aspect of if I have people in my area, like that I, even if I'm having conflict with them, but who have been consistent, who are safe enough for me to be able to say, yeah, not this, but that. Even though
Mm.
I'm like trembling as I'm like requesting it, and just
Mhm.
seeing how that lands. Is a huge part of the practice because you're completely right. Like, it's gonna feel scary to do something completely out of our comfort zone. But like you said, just those little steps, like, not, I can help you, but not today, XY, right? Like 3 days later, or 2 weeks later, I can do this for you. Like, that is a small step to a really big felt sense of empowerment that you can provide to
Yeah.
people.
Yeah. With bosses también, like what I realized is that a lot of us fear saying, I don't know, you know? So like so we think we need to know everything. And then if we don't know it, we think we're like the worst and we're gonna get fired. But how many times do your bosses not know, you know, so many things that you know or that you think they should know? So like I invite them in people like sometimes if it feels safe, notice when you're always trying to step up to the plate and think you need to know the answer when they ask you a question. And can you dare one time to say, actually, I don't know? Even if you do know, you could say, I'm not sure, or I'm not sure. Can I double check and come back? There's different ways of creating space for yourself in a work environment because this authenticity that we're talking about, it's likely that if we're not authentic in one space, there's many spaces where we bring that lack of authenticity and space for ourselves. And so we're bringing all of these masks to all these places sin darnos cuenta. So if we think like being a good worker, quote unquote, is someone that always says yes, that always knows the answer, that is always on time, that's freaking exhausting, you know? And then if to be a good daughter, oh, it's because you always say yes, always on time, always depend, always there's, oh my gosh, exhausting también. And then you bring that into friendships and then relationships and then parenting. Like, no wonder we're burnt out sometimes, you know? Like, it's too
Yeah.
much.
Yeah. But that
Yeah.
too makes me think of like the underneath of that, this felt sense of we're not worthy and we are bad. I think you said something about like, well, do you think you are?
Like you're good or, mm-hmm,
This felt sense of like, well, I'm bad if I don't meet these expectations. Um, and so for me, it's like that. If we can get underneath all of that, right? Like, where is your worth, right? How do you feel worthy of voicing, right, these things to other people or making mistakes? And the part of it as we're learning to expand into these spaces, I like to call them play because it feels less it feels
mm-hmm,
less like challenging for me. Like this is my own word that I use for myself,
mm-hmm,
is even in when I'm making mistakes. So an example that I can give to you is like when um my son was little, I was navigating a lot of just different things. I had postpartum depression. I was navigating some of my own like past trauma and things of that. And so there's parts of me that weren't able to hold him the way that I would have liked, especially like around mistakes. That's like
mm-hmm,
a thing that I'm glad to say that we have established like now. Um, but I remember this part where I was working on just having more patience. And he's a kid. He's like messing with like the bed and all these other things. And I saw myself. It was a very weird experience where I like literally saw myself get mad. I got mad at him. And then I had this thought in my mind. I'm like, Laylee, he's a kid. Why are you
mm.
mad? Like, no pasó nada, mami. Like, talking to myself and be like,
Wow.
no pasó nada, mami. Like, he's okay. You're okay. This is easily, like, you just make the bed. Like, it's okay. And even though I had already done the thing that I wish I wouldn't have done, right? I was able to give myself, like you said, like this much more space of, okay, next
Mm.
time this happens, I can bring back that thought process of like, he's a kid. ¿Quién se lastimó? Nadie. Is this
Yeah.
fixable? Yes, it is. And so even when clients make a mistake or don't know, right? Like how much more compassion can they have for self in those things? Even
Mhm.
when they say, okay, I'll help you, but didn't put the, oh, I'll help you in a couple of weeks. It's okay, you know, as long as they have recognition of it and are able to do differently next time, or even come back and be like, I'm sorry. I thought I was available, pero no, I'm not, you know, and like fixing it in real time versus beating of self.
Uh-huh. And, like, reinforcing I'm bad.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
It's that
Yeah.
shaming of self when we
Mhm.
make those mistakes or fall back into those patterns. That's just reinforcing that we're bad versus if you can sit with yourself and have compassion and be like, man, I did it again. Pero now I know for next time. Or what are my options right now to be able to not do this, right? Or not have this
Yeah.
conversation with this person. Or even repair. Like, I don't know how many of us, I know that I'm guilty of this, right? I've had a blow up and then I'm like, like, why did I say that? Why did I do that? You know? And then I have to come back and be like, oh yeah, man, I'm so sorry. Especially like my son or my husband or my sister or anyone, like, right? Like, I'm so sorry. Like, that's
Mhm.
completely not okay the way that I showed up. And, you know, I really want to talk about this and center the fact that we both deserve to have these spaces where we're heard and seen. So
Yeah.
I want to come back to this because we're not
Mm,
perfect and we're
that's
not
so
going to get it
beautiful.
right.
Yeah, knowing that there's, you can have a reparative conversation, I think is so yeah, that's beautiful porque when we don't grow up knowing that and having that available to us también, then like I've recognized that when people start thinking of, let's say, setting boundaries or doing things differently, they think they only have one go at it, which adds up the nerves to do it and adds up so much emotional like backing that it makes it impossible to feel like you can do it. But knowing, like you said, that like if you mess up, if you say it too harshly, you can come back. It's a learning process. Not it wasn't always modeled for us, but we can be like, "Hey, you know what I said last time? I feel like it came off the wrong way. I didn't mean it that way. I meant it this way." You know?
Mhm.
It's so beautiful. Like, wow, that's available, but we don't always know that, you know? And so making it like a part of our process of like, okay, and if it goes sour, we can have a reparative conversation. It's okay. I think is beautiful.
Yeah, yeah. And how much more too could we learn if we had seen that growing up? Or if our parents had done that for us versus not talking to us or being like, ¿Quieres un taco?
Yeah.
¿O quieres comer? And I'm like,
¿Quieres
no, estoy
fruta?
enojada. Like,
Yeah, yeah. Because I mean, I think I've said it before, it's like, I don't think they had the emotional bandwidth, you know? They didn't have bandwidth of a lot because they were in survival mode, they were living quickly, they were also probably learning and processing and, you know, like, so much at the same time, but it's really cool when we get to tap into, like, a different way of communicating and being like, we get to have reparative conversations, and I've brought that with my parents sometimes, and it's been different, you know? At first, like, a lo mejor they don't even know how to sit in that, like, "Ay, eso ya pasó. Okey, yo sé que ya pasó, pero" like, this or this, and, you know, what how did you feel about it, you know? And it's been cool just to, like, invite that in.
and the other thing that I think about is what we're doing is we're teaching them language, right? There's
Mm,
so many people who
mhm.
don't know that, and even your clients, right? They don't know or haven't put together the language to be able to express like their feelings, their preferences, their
Yeah,
emotions, or like their hurts and vulnerabilities. And so I think that that's another part of the conversation as well, right? Like, yes, I can have the willingness to want to do this. I just haven't had the example or the language or the felt sense of what that looks like. So again, like the work that you do, the work that I do, really creating those spaces for people to tap in and be like, oh, okay, like this is what this feels like. Oh, I can use these words or I can have this request.
yeah.
Um,
And with that
yeah.
first gen lens, like the fact that both we have that también, porque from a I think as a first gen telling, let's say, or hearing that from a white therapist, or just as someone that might not understand, they might be like, "No, but you don't get it. You're not first gen," and we get it, and we're here telling you, like, yes, we know it's hard. There's all these layers, there's all these expectations, and yet we've dared to do it and have found our way to find our own safety back. You know, so like maybe we can like talk about that to wrap up today's episode. You've talked about coming back to center, and I think that is imperative when you start to do new things that maybe don't go as planned, you know? So maybe you're hearing this episode and you're like, okay, I feel ready to do this boundary thing, you know, and I'm going to say it in this way. And you know, and then it goes south. Like maybe an argument happens or something happens. How do people or how can people come back to center?
Yeah, that's a beautiful question. Um, One of the things that I have done personally, um, for my own like journey and like with clients is that this ability to take a break, right? Like how many of us have been in a very heated argument where we still want to like continue until there's a resolution, or the opposite, right? We just want to get away because the
Mhm.
more that another person is coming towards us, we just feel unsafe, right? And those are coming from our attachment wounds, the ways that
Mhm.
we weren't able to move through tough conversations, right, with our caregivers, or the way that they reacted when we had like big emotions. And so one of the biggest things that I do and I share with clients is like, it's okay to take a break. It's okay to like pause. It's okay to say, okay, I need this space to come back. And the breath is a big one, right, for me. That's always been a really big one, or even like a meditation. And I know that's not always available to everyone, but even taking like 3 deep breaths and just
Mm.
coming back and centering into the body can be so very beneficial. Or even I know
Mhm.
that some other people share, and I do this all the time as well, is like going outside barefoot and like grounding, right? Being able to
Mm.
ground your energy back into the earth. Or even just changing the environment is another like big one too. And not like having the same conversation in your house, maybe saying like, okay, after we've come back together, let's go for a walk, or let's have this conversation in a
Mm.
park, or let's just sit outside and have, just a change of scenery can be
Mhm.
a really big one. Um, and lastly, that piece of self-compassion and like curiosity, right? Especially when it comes to just asking ourselves, okay, what happened there? Like, what was the emotion? What was the story that I was
Mm.
telling myself? What was the need
Mhm.
that wasn't being met? And is that something that this other person needs to fulfill, or is this something that I can take care of right now? So just a
Ooh,
lot of
yeah.
like curiosity around the process inside. Um, and that takes practice. We're not always going to get it
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. I think that brought up just like the sometimes we think, or sometimes without realizing it, in setting a boundary, we're looking for validation. Like, validate how I'm feeling, validate that I need this. And the person might not have the space or the knowing, like, maybe like for you it's been this ongoing story that it takes months or years for you to get to this boundary setting, but for that person they don't think about it that way. It didn't, like, they're not on your in your brain, they're in their brain. And so sometimes we come in strong with this boundary and it's not received the way we think, and so we don't get the validation of like, oh, you're right, you know and so I want to remind you guys, like, sometimes the validation is for you to meet your needs, not for them to meet them. It's not for them to say, yes, you are right. Let me honor what you're saying. It's you're showing yourself that you honor how you feel and that you're willing to use your voice in order to do so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
beautiful. Yes. And that builds that love of self, that knowing that I am good, right? Even in this interaction that didn't go as I planned to, or even though I didn't get what I was seeking from this other person, right? Like, I'm still good enough to deserve this, to get it. And maybe it's something that I have to provide for myself. Um,
Mhm.
or even that
Mm.
acknowledgement of that person is not where I need them, making the choice, is this a relationship that I want to continue to be in? That's another aspect. And if it is, what needs to shift? Because the only thing that we can control, or the only thing that we can like shift and change, is ourselves, nobody else.
Yeah, that's a good point too. Like, we can't engage in this with the idea that this is going to change them, because then we can get into this slippery slope where we're setting all these boundaries hoping that people change and are the way that we feel safe in, as opposed to finding that safety within. So, whew, such a good topic. Thank you so much for bringing it in. I feel like there's so many layers to it, and we could probably talk about this so much more, but I want to be mindful of your time and of the listeners' attention span. uh, do you have any last words as we wrap up part 2 with the listeners?
Just again, like a deep, deep thank you and appreciation for this space, for this conversation, for um, yeah, this corazonada, this plática. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
been so fun and so kismet and aligned to have this conversation with you. So thank you so much, and thank you to everyone who's listening.
Yes, thank you guys. You guys are part of this conversation. Thanks to the podcast is that we get to have these. So thanks to everyone. So much
Yes.
gratitude. You guys make sure that you check out her work. Her website will be linked in the description. And yeah, thank you so much, Laylee. Okay. Talk to you guys later.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.